Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And once again, welcome to the next installment of The Mouse Says the Butler Didn't Do It. Unpublished mystery stories written by myself, Nico Scher, in the pen name of Cheryl Ann Butler. When last we met, Storm unleashed a torrent of hellfire and brimstone on his mother's psychiatrist, who turns out to be an old friend and was involved in things he found out through Ghram. He also come to find out that the man he thought was his father was not. Reed Harlow Carlson turned out to be his birth father, Ghram Calhoun's half-brother through Runella. In this sequence of events, we will see what other secrets Manduala holds, to a point where Storm wants answers. He's tired of being lied to and having been manipulated by multiple people in his life. He wants answers, and he will not stop until he gets those. In the background, you may see several cats wandering around as we are now recording in our dining room area, as opposed to the back room of the house or the living room, as we are under construction out here. So we now continue with A New Hope Thanksgiving in chapter 41. Ghram looked up at Storm as he was still struggling to write several names from the folded 11 by 13 inch photo that Storm had come across from the Bible that was his great-grandmother Dawkins. Ethel held her arms around Gram's shoulders from behind as they trembled. He was slow to stand as his entire body shook and he removed her arms. "No, Mom. We need answers." Ghram looked down at the teen. Storm held out the braid to hold it against Gram's long curls. "This belongs to you. Kathy cut it, or more than likely tore it from your hair, and I don't know when it happened. She kept it as a sick-ass trophy, as part of her revenge for a stupid teenage broken heart." He set it down on the table and dropped his head. "I'm sorry, so damn sorry this ever happened to you, or anyone, and that she was part of it." He tried to turn, but Ghram touched his shoulder to stop him. Storm turned back to his father. "No, I told you earlier this morning. You do not apologize for what any of them did to me. Another piece of the puzzle has fallen into place for me. The school Christmas party the year before." He looked around the table. "That's where this shit all began. The day I went off about the break-in, and you thought I was blaming you." Chris looked at him. "Yeah, Dad. George had something to do with that, and I tried to explain I'll try to explain in a few moments." "Fine." Ghram blew out a breath. "We were 16, and I was blitzed. That was my usual way to deal with shit back then. Kathy, asked me to date her. I told her no, because I wasn't interested. But it wasn't her. I told her that, and that she was pretty, but I wasn't interested in any girls. I was still trying to figure myself out. Because of you being gay, Storm looked him in the eyes. Ghram smiled. Yes, if she was a guy then, maybe she would have turned my head. But I was in my own head, trying to figure things out. But she lost it over that one. Storm bit his lip and nodded. Oh yeah, did she ever? Kathy lost it and went to Reggie. Christ, why didn't you tell us this? Chris asked. I was pissed at yous, and there was a threat. I'll explain that later as well. She drug him over and said to me, tell him what you just told me. I dare you. Too drunk to realize what I was getting myself into, I did. I opened my big friggin' mouth. That piece now fits in the proper place in my puzzle. I understand you're probably my son, mine. And Tootie, man, that's more than likely, right? Reed did play the field with Philly, as we called her, and was one of the fields he played on. She wasn't out of New Hope, but he knew her from somewhere. And yeah, her folks, like Ranella and Georgie Porgy, had the bucks. His voice trailed off as he looked at Chris. They belonged to the same country club and private golf course, his father answered. Oh yeah, I can see that. But how am I Reed's half-brother? Can I at least hold my son? Ethel asked. Ghram looked around the hall at the family members. He opened his shaking arms. And shook his head at Ethel. No, not right now. But can Storm step into mine? Sure, Dad. Anytime. Storm leaned in for Ghram to wrap him in a strong hug and kiss his dreadlocks. Ghram looked at Chris, then Ethel. Dad, Mom, are you two ready for a fucking war? One of you had better have a really good explanation for this situation. I won't ever take another drink. I promised my son here. That's going to take some getting used to. Wow. He smiled and rubbed his cheek against Storm's dreadlocks. Yep, calling you Dad, I mean, instead of thinking of you as my big brother. Ghram cocked his head. True, very true. But everybody better start talking and make sense. I know each of the lions betted Ranella because she had it with Georgie Porgy. You all took care of her needs. That's never been a secret. She deserved a hell of a lot better than him. But there's got to be a reason. If I'm here and use... What the fuck, Dad? Cause and effect? It is time. He should have been told long ago what occurred and why, and all the bullshit that went on over him, and the complete asinine bullshit that George did, and Ranella was a fool to keep face for the sake of her Greek Orthodox Catholic and Irish Catholic belief, as she was first a witch and second a Catholic, and those beliefs of the Pope. Liliana's computerized voice spoke. For God's sake, the man was an adulterer and only wanted her for her money, and thought he would have Reed inherit the estate and turn this wonderful old home into a private gentleman's club for foreign interest, so they could bring in their high-class ladies, which was nothing more than he wanted to produce as an exclusive brothel. Lottie's hands rested on Liliana's back of her wheelchair as she reached to pet Coco and took a large towel to dry the big dog's dripping jaws. "You two are right." Ethel held her head high. Silver spoke next. "George had a vasectomy without telling Ranella. The damn fool knew she wanted more children. After his son and heir was born, he didn't want any more. When she found out, she simply exploded. We all know what Ranella's temper could be like. She loved children. One of the reasons she brought all of us around and gathered us into her family, because she was an only child and had no siblings, because Yaya and Papu were lucky to have her born before the injury Papu sustained in Vietnam, and he couldn't produce any more offspring. We were their children, thanks to their daughter." Peggy took Hut by the hand. "True," her husband said. "That hurt both of their hearts, so we became the children they could never have. As with Nellie, well, Ranella even wanted to adopt, and Georgie Porgy refused. Well, of course, it couldn't be reversed. That fucker really screwed up. She still wanted to fill this house with the love, joy, and laughter of children. So, in a way, our children became hers. That's why she was first godmother to each of the next generation. But there was a special reason for you, Ghram," Silver finished. "Chris, open your damn mouth right now." Chris shook his head. "Let it come out and let the cards fall where they lay. I'm ready for this war." Ranella informed him she was filing for a divorce. The computerized voice of Liliana spoke. "Now is the time for truth, Chris. Tell them the truth. Tell them both. The heartache, the hurt that bastard caused her, and why she loved us all so much, and how she tried desperately to keep Ghram in her life, and that you two, Chris and Effie, and my Jackson made sure that was done, despite that motherfucker's repeated tries to destroy her and the attempts of murder that he wanted to take you out, and that you and her son's relationship, because all he wanted was Reed to have everything." Hap took a deep breath. "He came up with an idea, Storm, Ghram. Have one of us sleep with Ranella and get her pregnant to appease her. That way, his ass could still gain what he wanted. This was after he created the devastation for Chris and Ethel's family. Dumb, but we all, including our lionesses, would do anything to save our Queen Ranella's heart. And yeah, dumbass George's marriage, and the fucker knew it. We didn't know, however, it was already over and irreparable because of shit he'd done to her that freaking started even before their wedding and continued on the first night of their marriage." Ethel stepped forward to look Ghram in the eye. "May I at least touch my child and grandchild, if you'll accept the touch right now? I know you feel betrayed, Ghram. I'm sorry. So very sorry." Gram's eyes flashed fire. Then he looked at Chris. Here it comes. Chris rolled his eyes. He's so much like me. More than you are, Jimbo. And damn, I know I'm gonna fucking pay for this one. Chapter 42. There was silence in the room for several seconds. Gram's head was now held high as he faced off and looked up at his father's 6'7" height. Yeah, old man, here it fucking comes. I'm just like you, so be prepared. You slept with her to create a fuck-up like me. He thumped himself in the chest. The great quarterback and the head cheerleader and the 2 captains of the first-string squads and A-plus students. Honor roll all the way. Homecoming queen and prom king. Tell me, why don't you, Dad, how your prom queen felt about this? He looked at Ethel. You little shit, she growled. Storm looked at her, then to Ghram. His father stood gaping. How dare you? I gave my permission because I wanted another child we could love as much as she did. Don't say something you can't take back, because you, my beloved son, are your birth mother's son, and our queen had a tongue that was razor sharp and could slice someone's heart in 2 with one word. And oh, fuck yes, you are your father's son as well, with your temper. A temper he can control. Yeah, he can when he has to. Unlike yours, because you seem to take after Ranella like that with no damn filters. And you're so much like the old man's and Pop's. Ethel stood between him and Chris. But you can't always keep your tongue silent when you know what's best for you, can you? You never could. She learned to take care and control that tongue of hers, where unfortunately, like that of your temper, my dear son, you never could and have had to apologize for it many, many times over. Fair enough and forewarned, Mom. You 2 actually created something like me, huh, Dad? A faggot. Like George called me that day in my office when I wouldn't let him have petty cash for Reed's gambling debt because Ranella, apparently my mother, had cut them both off from the store and the inn's finances. Fuck! Ethel threw up her hands and looked at the ceiling as she got out of the way. You had to use the one and only fucked up word in this freaking world that would set him off. Boy, your ass is grass and on the line, and you now are on your own. And he owns the mower that's going to run your grass ass over. She spun with her hands up and did her best to get the hell out of the way and stepped back. As she did, she latched onto Storm to pull him clear. It was Rasputin that put out a hand. When is he ever going to friggin' learn that is the one word? I mean, really, Nellie. He's smarter than this, I promise. After all, you helped to raise his dumb ass of ours. I'm bailing and ducking for cover. My sister and brothers, I suggest you all do the same and get the hell out of our king's fucking way before this roof caves in on all of us. Rasputin grabbed a hold of Ethel and attempted to shield Storm. Chris had shot to his feet. As he stood there, he picked up Ethel to move her clear out of Rasputin's arms and spun her to sit in a chair and out of the way into the front of Rasputin. Then Tsar placed his hands on Ethel's shoulders to hold her in place. He stepped away from his son and grandson, then slammed his fist into the wall behind him, putting a massive hole in the plaster and caving in the laps, going through the insulation and bursting out 2 clapboards on the outside wall. As he removed the bloody left hand, the cold air and daylight of the November morning encroached into the hall. Ghram swallowed hard and backpedaled as he put a chair between himself and his father. Chris turned to face his youngest child and glared, then grabbed the chair and moved it, hurling it halfway across the room to step into his son's private space. Don't you ever let me hear you call yourself that derogatory, racist, obnoxious, homophobic term for a person like my beloved, highly intelligent, and very brave, queer, gay, homosexual, whatever the hell the proper term is in fashion nowadays for my son, or any of those special folks again, or I will take your ass out behind your grandfather, Theo's Otterbarn, and beat the living shit out of you for disrespecting yourself and the memory of your Uncle Reuben, and those folks like you who stood their goddamn ground against assholes like George. Like I did to Georgie Porgy when I walked in on it and it happened right in front of me, Jess, and Dan in your office with Tucker with us. And yes, God damns it, some of the bruises on that ass's body were from me 2 years later, and Bowie was told about it because I confirmed it and signed a deposition to the fact, along with the second deposition, that the bruising and broken nose Ranella had suffered was from his attack on her and you, and that child over there, and that's why I went after his ass. Chris pointed a bloody left hand at him. Dad, shut the fuck up right now, you fucking smart-mouth little bastard that I'd helped to produce for our queen's happiness and that of your mother here. Don't you say another goddamn word. You want the fucking truth? Well, here it friggin' is, and your ass, as well as everyone else here at these tables and in Manduala, can freaking hear it and fucking deal with it. Dad, no, you're going to friggin' listen. And damn it to the bowels of hell, it's about fucking time the truth came the hell out. Yeah, we swore to Ranella we'd keep the secret. But fuck it now, as she was murdered by the 2 bastards 10+ years ago. I'm no longer committed to that promise. You always wanted to know why you were the last of our children, right? Deal with this then, boyo. I almost lost the love of my life because of the miscarriage that the motherfucker George Carlson caused by shoving past Mom and knocking her down a flight of stairs into the furnace room in the bottom of the double basement, and then left her there for Theo to find 2.5 hours after what he'd done. That was when they came in from shopping. What? Ghram looked at Ethel. True. You want the truth about your guardian angel? That's why I lost her. Because of him. Now, shut up and let your father continue. Ethel stood now, standing side by side with her husband, but was still held in the protection of the Tsar's arms, and Rasputin stood behind her. Yeah, that's what happened. All because he wanted to get to a goddamn Christmas party and some shit with his drinking and sex buddies that they were having, because he was fighting with Ranella after she told him no, she was not going to swing so he could sleep with different partners, and she just found out he'd been cheating on her since before they took their vows. And she was still pregnant with that asshole Reed, and the goddamned rumors going around New Hope were true, and she was being made a laughingstock of. The bastard didn't even call for an ambulance. He simply took off. He drew a deep breath. Dad? No. You're going to hear this, so either sit down and shut the fuck up, or I will make you. I have had it. You want more of the truth, 'cause here it comes. Get ready for it, little man. Chris, darling, your blood pressure. Fuck my blood pressure. I found out from Mom what had happened when she woke 4 days later after the hysterectomy that saved her life, and we had to make arrangements for our baby girl, your sister, Ranella Esther's funeral, because we would not just let the hospital dispose of her remains like they used to. Aunt Lottie made sure of that for us, and so did Azart and Rasha. That's why she's laid to rest in the Papadopoulos family cemetery. Ranella continued to blame herself and demanded it that way, and I busted his ass up at her wake when he told me he'd taken the fuck off, and had the audacity to tell me he thought because Mom was a cheerleader and an A student, she'd have the brains to land on her feet, not her belly. What? Chris held a finger in front of his son's face and tapped him on the lips. Silence, boy, or I'll silence you. Ghram swallowed hard and kept his mouth shut. He wanted to get to his freaking mistress or manstress and his orgies, and they were more important than what he caused to happen to my wife and unborn daughter and your brother and sister. It cost us your sister's life at 6 months gestation, and Ethel could never have another baby. I came home on emergency leave when this happened. He reached back to pull Ethel forward away from Rash and Tsar and into his arms as his own body shook with the force of his anger. Ghram went to speak, but didn't at the shake of Ethel's head. That is why you are our youngest and last born. Now, cat's coming out of the bag, 'cause Manduala don't know this little tidbit. And every one of you lions and lionesses, hold it together for me, 'cause I'm barely holding it myself right now. The only one that's got my goddamn chain is this woman standing next to me. I can't and won't contain you. Let it go when you leave the building. The day of her funeral, he refused to attend. The funeral of your baby sister. He told Ranella he didn't want to get depressed, so he didn't show. On the way back from the cemetery, as she walked the trails to get her mind back into its place and not lose it, she hears music coming from one of the cottages. She followed it. She opened the door to find him in the middle of a sex party. What? Mac looked at him, then to Sonny. Oh yeah, Mac. The booze was flowing, and she looks at the tables he has set up. He's pulled her into his arms and states, so you come to join me. You changed your mind. You ready to party, sweetheart? She asked about the food laid out, 'cause it looked real familiar. The casseroles, the chafing dishes. He tells her, Sadie can make more. She's the chef, ain't she? Turns out he and his friends helped themselves to remove everything from the inn that was set up for our little girl's Shiva. He was using the red Shiva candles as party lights. They removed the coverings of the mirrors so that his lady friends could fix their hair and makeup. They took the stools for sitting Shiva and used them for the comfort of their feet. While we had our own home, yes, Mom was in recovery, and the Papadopoulos decided that with all of us and Mom needing care, we were to stay at the inn, which upset him. Why? Here it comes, so listen well. That was because that fucker realized he couldn't have his friends and guests come over while Pat Pooh was at the studio and the women were at the store. They were registered as guests, and he would visit each room as he chose to. Remember, he wasn't working the first 2 years of their marriage. No, that mother wasn't. He was living off of them, Pat stated. He destroyed every Jewish rite we were to observe for our little girl. And your Bobby Esther almost tore him to shreds. She had followed Ranella to make sure she was all right. All 300-plus pounds of her came roaring at him as she followed Ranella. And she not only jacked him against the wall, she put him through the damn thing. His ass landed on the porch of that cottage with a man-sized hole through the window and wall. She then turned into a raging bull, took the broom to each and every one of his party guests' ass. That ended that. That's when Theo told him to either get a fucking job or get the hell out. So that's why the O'Shaughnessy's were so surprised when we showed up at their pub, and she was on the warpath and had Beckett's locksmith come in and have all the cottage locks changed. His ass disappeared for almost 2 months, and suddenly, when he returned, he had a job that was that so-called academy. Czar folded his arms over his chest. Yep, you got it, brother. But his sulking ass showed at O'Shaughnessy's, and when the shit hit the fan with Grant and I, Phil pounded them both into pudding, and that's when they both disappeared. Colette brushed her hair behind her ear as she stated this. Our kicker-punter, with his military training, had as special forces, and Czar and Rasputin was a badass, and I bet he still is. He protected me and Ramella multiple times, and Storm, that is your grandfather. Damn straight he did. Chris blew out a breath. The fact is, George, after he wanted this for Ranella, and the ultrasound showed you were a boy, Ghram, he reneged and only wanted his son. He didn't even think I don't even think if you were a girl he would have wanted to jeopardize Reed's heirship apparent either. But he never would have stopped his cheating on Ranella and causing her the heartache that she went through over his ass. Liliana's robotic voice spoke once more. She never slept with him after, and that son of a bitch didn't even turn up for her labor and delivery of their son. He was out on one of his dates and couldn't be reached because whatever motel he was at, he told them he didn't want to be disturbed. Silver took her to the hospital that March because he was home on leave. We were all stationed in El Salvador. Chris looked at him. And the Lionesses started to make calls to every hotel and motel here and in 5 counties and in New Jersey. Silver pushed his glasses up. No one found him. A week later, he calls home to be told the baby was born and throws a party for himself and several of his buddies at the Red Raven on US 1, Rasputin growled. The end of it all came to a head after he reneged on you. When you were born, he wanted you put up for adoption in the Catholic social services. That's why they had separated the bedrooms, and she moved into the carriage house, and why I and Mom would bring you to work, and your Aunt Emily would take you to Mystic Moments, so Ranella could share at least part of her life with her second son. Chris started around the tables to turn for the kitchen. Dad, Ghram started for him. Fuck it, no fucking way. Oh no, not this friggin' easy way out. He wheeled back to come face to face, nose to nose, chest to chest with his youngest son, and looked down into Graham's eyes, so like those of Nicholas's. Ghram took a step back at the look in his father's eyes. Shit. You said it, little bro, Jim stated. When Reed started into his shit, she reminded George that he'd better handle his son because the goddamn stupidity was a broken condom with her that he had pulled. She was the only reason he was living on this land, and that she was the sole reason he wasn't looked down upon because his family was known to have fled Germany before they could be captured for harboring William Carroll with a K, who was being hunted for recapture as he was an escaped, convicted child rapist and murderer. Ghram looked wide-eyed. What? Who? Dad. Happy stood to his full height, which towered over his sons, Ricer and Cody, as both the men stood 6.5 feet. Ghram, Reed, it seemed, followed in his father's family footsteps. That's from what your son there states. Chris looked from one man to another. So mote what I say here and now be. If I ever find that motherfucking prick-ass bastard as after what he's done to our daughter, son, and grandson, I will gut the goddamn drug-dealing rapist bastard where he stands, tear his intestines out, stomp all over them, and make him watch, then tear his withered genitalia off with my bare hands, roast and feed him his own fucking cock and balls before I drag his ass through Main Street of New Hope and hang him from the spire of St. Martin's of Tours below our crucified Savior, with the sign around his neck that reads child rapist in his own tainted, dysfunctional, sick-ass, fucked up, patriotic blood that runs through his father's heart and and the tainted sperm that created his fucked up ass. Chris shook as he turned to walk out. Ask your Uncle Czars and Rasputin about your sister Ranella Esther's headstone. Then ask Silver about the repairs he had to do to Bridget. And ask Smeagol if she'll tell you about her 17th summer. Chris stormed out of the door. Ghram swallowed hard. Dad? Dad! Mom, don't let him go like this. He'll kill himself in that Mustang. He'll put the Bridgewater beast into a tree. He's going to head to the cemetery. Jimmy, please do something. I really fucked up. Jim patted him on the back as he paused and held up a set of keys. You asked for it from him. Open mouth, insert foot. You just had to use that one word, didn't you? He shook his head. Wasn't as bad as it could have been. I've been on the receiving end of worse from that old man. He ain't going nowhere without these. Beth Anna and the kids washed and waxed it yesterday for him, and I drove it over this morning. I got that hothead. You hang with my nephew, and for God's sakes, Big Mouth, and for all of our sakes, don't be an idiot. Don't ever use that F-bomb of a word again. Jim followed their father. Mom, I'm so sorry. I never knew how you lost Ranny and what happened to her stone, and what's with Chrissy's 17th summer. Rasp, Czar, you two and your lionesses were the ones who discovered it, and then found out what had actually happened with Silver doing the repairs. One of you want to explain? Ethel turned to the men. Got it, Effie. Rasputin turned to Czar. But I'll say this before Smeagol walks in. Ghram, your big sister. The word is rape. I'll kill him. Ghram started to step forward. Czar put a hand on the man's shoulder. It's why he disappeared for 6 months into the state facility and was never allowed to be near any of the girls on his own after that. So he turned it on to me with George. Czar looked him in the eye as he realized what was said. I'll explain about the stone. Czar gave a nod, a silent understanding. When Reed stole the Mustang when he was 15, he plowed it into Rainey's headstone and destroyed her lamb and lion monument your birth mother and grandparents had made for her by an Italian pink marble sculptor in Rome and had it shipped here. He did it on purpose because they had a special wreath placed and decided to donate money to a charity in her name, and Ranella decided that money was coming out of his holiday budget because of the shit he had pulled over the year. Christmas Day, he found a single letter on the tree addressed to him and nothing else. It stated everything he had cost in damage that year in a full tally list, and he was told until he reimbursed her, he would not be on the reciprocating end of any gifts or allowed until it was or an allowance until it was paid back in full, and that his gift money was going to the charity of her choice, and he had until New Year's to find a paying job, and she expected payment to start the week after his first paycheck, or she would be taking it from his accounts and the trust fund they had set up. They replaced it, and he, after coming out of juvenile, He was court-ordered to pay for the damages done to Dad's stang and pay the cost of having the monument replaced. That infuriated him and George both even more, and your dad and he came to blows one afternoon at a family gathering when they tried to take him on. The two of them, Hut smiled. Boy, do I remember that one. Pat crossed his arms over his chest. We said fine. The cubs were with the lionesses. Ranella was told to prepare for blood and guts on both of them. She stated, and I quote, I no longer give a shit. Chris, my king, do what needs to be done, 'cause I've fucking had it with both of them, unquote. The brothers of Manduala's lions only made the circle with Papu, Paypal, and Abuelo, watching to make sure no one of the little ones could see. You had them down by the river fishing with Jim and Smeagol, and it was 2-on-1. Ghram went wide-eyed. What? Storm shrieked. Pat shook his head. I'll admit, it wasn't a fair fight. They would have needed at least 2 more on their team, and the playbook man fighting with one hand tied behind his back, he smiled. Czar high-fived Rasputin, our captain and quarterback and our king, put both of them in the hospital that day. George was laid up for a week, and his pup didn't walk right for over a month. Then Ranella informed George to find somewhere else for Reed to live. He had 24 hours or she was going to have Chris charge both of them with attempted assault and battery. Emily smiled. He was gone the next day. Dad broke a finger on his right hand, Max stated. Think it was his pinky. But other than that, no, Rasputin shook his head. Let's give credit here. Chris had a split lip at the end of the night. Yeah, he did, Sonny chuckled and raised her hand. But I accidentally nailed him with my get-her-done grill spatula to the back end of the bottle opener when I didn't see him hunch down to check and see if we needed more wood for the fire. He bent down as I went to flip a burger and wham! That quick. I'm the only one I know of besides the high school sweetheart that's standing there to bust the man in the lip and make him bleed. I'm pretty sure it was her original hit that reopened. Mama Licorice, am I right? Yep, it was. That's why the upper lip scar is more prominent than the lower one. She smiled. That was my hit, not theirs. I want credit for that one. Sonny 1, Chris 0. She pumped her fist into the air. Some tension left the room as there were chuckles that came around the table. Ethel wrapped her arms around both her son and her grandson. It will be okay. We all love yous. You both know this. How does Reed know I'm... Ghram closed his eyes for a moment, then rapidly blinked. Yours, Ranella's, and Dad's. Diana and Lucifer, I hope not, because if he does, it means... I know, Ghram cringed. He planned to carry out an act of incest, as well as assault and battery and rape. He held his son. I need you to talk to Perry after what you stated. Please stay here. Be part of this family. We need you here, and you are wanted and loved. So are they. He nodded to the dogs, seated and laying with several of the cats. Please. If I do, Dad, I'm sorry, but I got a mess to clean up in my room again, 'cause I kind of lost it. But... Dad, it also means, 'cause of me, I put you in danger. Fuck me, but once again. And what about our Tootie and RCC and Buddy? How old is RCC? Do you know? Ghram asked. She's about 2 weeks younger than me. She's mentally slow. I'd say mentally about age 10. She and Buddy, who is 10, had been in and out of foster care since right after he was born. Okay, that explains a few things. Phyllis didn't want him, but she would never sign papers for any of them to be adopted. We don't know why or who the father is. He's a good little boy, highly intelligent, and Tootie states he deals with severe ADHD and has been on prescription and dosed with Ritalin by his mother. Phyllis can't deal with him, and it now appears it's the same with RCC. Tootie has tried to get custody since she turned 18. But the asses keep returning the poor children to the mother. Peggy shook her head. I will deal with Tootie, RCC, and Buddy if needs be. The girls and he visit me once a week. I will take care of settling them along with RCC and get her into special classes she may need. Then Manduala can and will step in. Liliana smiled as she patted Coco Chanel. Your boy may be coming for a visit with you and the other Cocos, she told the dog through her electronic voice. I'll tell you this, Storm. He'll have to come through us first, and Manduala will stand. He will have to fight every one of us to get anywhere near your father there, or you. Silver leaned on the main table to look at what Storm had put together. The dining hall's door slammed open, rattling the milk glass collection on the china hutch. Chapter 43. Jim and Chris stood there. Chris was breathing heavily. He took in one deep inhale, like he just ran a 4-minute mile or finished wind sprints for Coach Joe Blair all those years ago back in high school. The old quarterback's eyes spit fire, as if he was behind the offensive line of the late 70s, early 80s Lions in the state championship game. You're goddamn fucking right, Manduala stands. I will not let this go. Too many times Georgie Porgy got his way because his family's political agenda and their I know so-and-so, including that goddamn state representative. That's why his father got away with the bullshit in Vietnam, where we could have lost not only Papu, but Paypal and Abuelo. Old man Calhoun was the one that pulled them out along with Becky's grandfather after the fragging. Those freebies were caused by who they knew in Doylestown, Harrisburg, and friggin' Washington, D.C. with the shit of his nasty little secrets with the senators and representatives, especially Von Torp, and his history of that place they called the Crystal Palace Hotel. With his bullshit connections. Chris pointed a bandaged hand. That is my youngest son, Ethel's son, and Ranella's, our queen's, and our grandson. He dropped his arm. And by the way, even if she's Reed's, she's Ranella's granddaughter, and Tootie is not marrying Von Torp. Thurston W. and Daddy Moneybags can forget it. They can both go fuck themselves for that freaking deal. I forbid it. And I am not having RCC and little Buddy going back to that fucked up, drug-headed bitch of a dingbat woman who now I find out is the Buffinator's and Low L's fucked in the head daughter. Even if Iceberg gave her a chance at a decent life, that for Christ's sake she fucked up on him and on his ladies and their children. Applause broke out around the room. Pat leaned forward to look at the photos. Dakota. Yeah, Dad. Get your ass over here, boy. Dakota walked over to his father as he pointed to the other stuff on the table. How much further does this investigation need to go on the Papadopoulos' murders? I'm hereby refusing to call our queen by the last name of Carlson. She was laid to rest with the fight from us as Papadopoulos, and that's what we all called her. She was never thought of as a goddamn Carlson in any of our books. The police chief smiled at Storm and Ghram, then gave a chuckle. With that temper, we definitely know he's Gram's. After all, who else would take after Uncle Chris than one of his own? Oh, shut up and answer your dad's question, will you? Ghram growled. Sheesh, okay. Well, before the fireworks this Thanksgiving morning that we all witnessed, and I somehow think there's a whole hell of a lot more to come before Uncle Chris puts those 2 turkeys in the oven, and Aunt Em takes Storm for his doctor's appointment, and the rest of us head home to start the cooking for the gathering tonight, I had something I wanted to tell you. Now's as good a time as any. Ethel sighed and kissed Gram's cheek, then raised her hand to brush down his hair and tucked several strands behind his right ear that held his earring, and laid her head against Storm's dreadlock-covered head. You will call Perry, right? In a few minutes, Mom. Promise. We received the police sketches early this morning from Philly PD. Now, that was before the bitch Storm blew a gasket at this morning. Now, they are not nowhere near the quality of the work Salazar has done for us, but they had me calling Philly PD with confirmation on who the male shooter is, and yes, it was Reed. However, I need you all to look at these because I don't recognize the woman or the driver. He set out copies of the sketches in the middle of the table from the file he had continued to hold that morning. Each of the family members stepped forward to look at the sketches. Dakota, Storm picked up the woman's picture as he came forward. That's the blonde that murdered the guy at Reed's apartment building where 1404 is located. Down in Philly, in the housing project high-rise, with the sawed-off she had. You're sure? Yes. And she has kids with her and was pregnant. I don't know how many kids, but they were screaming and calling her Mamacita, and I think that's her in the photo standing next to Kathy. He tapped the folded 11 by 13 Ghram had laid on the table. Spanish. And she's blonde? He looked at the photo. Shit. That's very interesting. Richie, Jim, take a look at this and check out who's next to Kathy. They stepped forward. Jim stepped back next to Chris. That leans more towards Latino-American than the old Spaniard and the Mexican-American that's in the family's background, because Eddie Guerrero came up with that line in the early 2000s with the WWE storyline of him dating the female wrestler Chyna, Joni Laurie. It translates to hot mama, or to us it means foxy lady. He turned to Jess. Guess who's standing next to Kathy in that photo? Shit, my ex? Really? That's no freaking surprise. Yeah, it is. And Jess, that's got me wondering. When was the last time you heard anything or were told about Tammy or her whereabouts? Dakota looked at the teacher. Gentlemen? Colette stepped forward and poured it to her own hair. Abuelo Cordero is my father, remember? He was, in his younger days, a blonde. From my abuela Maria. She's not Mexican-American, but like the lovely Charo, her people were Spaniard-born, from Madrid, the blonde with the mocha eyes. My blue eyes and Ruben's came from my mother's, and Mom's eyes are green. Pepito has those baby blues as well. If that is Tammy, and it looks like it is, she was blonde hair and blue-eyed. Oh, fuck no, Jess sighed. Rumor and the notification that she tried to claim Esperanza as mine. She isn't, and I've never seen the baby. That was over a year and a half ago, when we tried to find her and get the kids back to the custody of Mom Colette and their grandparents. She's walked out of a woman's halfway house, then disappeared into the night with the two older kiddos and the newborn. She was in Montgomery County at the time. Jess blew out of breath as he looked at the sketch. Great. If she's with Reed, Dan's supposed, but not positive of, other half-brother, that ass Wells can't be far behind, and continued and combined that and continue it with her father. And the fact that Gilbert just got busted for breaking and entering and destruction of historical property. That's an A-bomb waiting to be dropped, and the kids are going to be endangered with the shit she does. It's like Nagasaki and Hiroshima all over again with her. But that sketch, it could be, or maybe it is her, but it's not. I don't know. Mom Colette, look close. There's something different in that look. Hair, she's aged, the drugs, it looks to me like she put on a lot of weight, then lost it really quick. Meth, probably. And Storm said she's pregnant, so something with her skin. Colette agreed. I don't know, but I think you might be right, Mom Colette. I got one of my stupid-ass tingles when I looked at it, and yeah, that photo, it's her with Kathy. Sorry, Ghram. I wouldn't put anything past her that she wasn't in this shit with you up to her freaking neck. If it was shit. Storm, did that guy look anything like me? The dude she blew away? I don't know. She bolted past me, and the next thing I knew was pain. Then I was being woken by Star, and we were moving to get my rear out of there, and I hit the back seat of Iceberg's car. The body, by that time, was gone. Okay, we need to check into a few things. Also, the street cameras in Newark. They caught the same SUV or one like it that there's still no model or make of as it entered the lot of the apartments Kathy and Storm shared at about 9 in the morning. Reed, went in. The blonde was with him, and yes, she looks pregnant. I'd say second trimester by the footage. An hour later, they come out, a little after 10. Both are dressed completely different. He's carrying trash bags, and she's in what looks like a nightshirt and pajama bottoms. They get in the black SUV and drive away. Storm raised his head to look around Ghram and step away from the table to pace. Kathy kept clothes for him there. I didn't get a chance to see if anything was missing of his or Kathy's. I mean, well, the place was basically empty when I was allowed to retrieve what I could. He dropped his head to inhale Gram's scent as he stepped back into his father's outstretched arms and sighed. I remember your cologne. Ghram smiled at Ethel. Your mom, Ethel, got me hooked on your car one Christmas when I came home from Rasmer. He looked up into Gram's eyes. I remember sitting on your lap in front of a Christmas tree. You gave me my G.I. Joes, the 12-inch dolls, and we played with Casper, Harley, Scout, Ilya, and Sally. And Ghost were there, the older, but yeah, he was older, but they played with me too. I think Irina and Ilyana had Barbie dolls, and with Spirit, and Papu Theo was doing voices like he was a general or commanding officer. You got that right, Storm. That was after Papu and I took the weapons off of you and out of your mouth. You had to taste everything and gnaw on the furniture's wooden legs just the way Dad did when he was that age. You two have a thing for wood, just like Aristotle. Chris smiled as he tried to calm himself. What's the plan here, boys? Let me tell you all what else the cameras and tape laps showed. About 1:30 in the afternoon, a gold Chrysler 300 pulls into the lot. A woman does not park, but pulls into the fire lane. She gets out, walks into the building. 10 minutes later, she's running out, literally at the break of speed. And yeah, it looks like she has stains on her slacks. She's clutching a bag and climbs into the car and takes off. 20 minutes later, the call was put in to 911 and dispatch is trying to get the woman to stay on the cell. She gave an address and reported an assault with a deadly weapon. She ended the call, but before she called, she turned off the GPS on the cell phone. That would make sense with Dr. Phil. She didn't want to be found out and wanted to play the game. I got out of school at 2:15. 2:45, I would have gotten off the bus at the 7-Eleven. She was in the Chrysler 300 in that parking lot, just sitting there. I waved. She waved back, and I walked the 3 blocks to the apartment and arrived probably 3:15. Storm shrugged. Somewhere around there, give or take a few minutes. Ghram took in a breath and looked at the photo of the driver. Dakota, the driver. I'm positive it's Reggie Collier, or Collier, as he also uses it. He's gotten heavier with age, but I will never forget that face. It's him. Dad? Reggie. Reed's driver. He don't drive for himself for some reason or another. I don't know why, but the driver, he calls him Reginald. Could that be him? More than possible and more than plausible. I need to make a call to Perry. You hold down the fort for me. Don't let that crazy legs quarterback of your grandfather of yours out of your sight. That's your assignment for 10 minutes or less. Got it? Yes, sir, Storm answered and threw him a salute. Ghram pulled out his phone. Nobody move. He held up a finger. Hey, what can I say? It worked earlier for Storm when he lost it, and I thought I'd give it a try. Be back in a few. He left the room. Chapter 44. Dakota looked at Storm. I'm okay, Dakota. More worried about my dad than I am about me. Jim gave a nod. He'll be okay. He's strong as hell, believe me. He'll stand. All right, we got 2 positives and 1 possible ID on them. Let me call it in to Philly PD and we'll figure it out from here. Dakota picked up the sketches. While we're waiting on Ghram, if some of you want to help me clear away the dishes and I'll get started on the turkeys. Chris started to bust the tables as the others helped. In the kitchen, he cleaned and dressed the turkey and preheated the ovens, then caught the sight of Ghram entering the dining hall and followed. Now, where were we? Ghram asked. And none of you listened to me. You all moved. Huh. Imagine that, he smiled. Dakota chuckled. We have 2 positives and 1 possible ID on these. I'm notifying Philly. We need to figure out a plan of action. Yes, please. Jim looked from his father to those around the tables, then jerked his head towards Chris. This quarterback needs a playbook plan. Cat's coming out of the bag, Dad. I just took the .44 Magnum off of him. He was checking to make sure it was loaded and kept in the flour sack and stashed there in the pantry from the night he took over as chef. He stared at his father. Chris shrugged. El Salvador ain't ever left me. Protect and kill what you have to. Right, brothers? Every vet that was standing there gave a nod, both young and old. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. My own life and the lives of my kids and grandkids to you, brother. Silver pushed up his glasses. As do I you, Chris retorted. Ghram looked at his father. No, he shook his head, then looked around. Damn you all, you old bastards, and you young ones as well. I want a promise from the classes of lions and lionesses, 1980 to 84. None of you go against him. I have a few secrets that I've kept to myself for too many years, and you all and my son need to know about. I spoke to Perry. He's been right for a long time. I should have let you all know about this. And my son needs to know, and you all need to explain it to your kids and grandkids. I'm tired of hiding it and the nightmare of it. I still have those damn things. If I open up, they may ease. Hell of a time to do it, but none of yous are to do anything about it. He looked down at Storm as they stood side by side. You can handle this. I know you can. You handled everything I told you this morning. You ready for the big reveal about this father of yours? You're my dad. I'm here for anything you got. Chapter 45. Ghram took a deep breath to step back. He leaned on the table as Ethel took Storm's hand. As he looked around the dining hall at each table, then to Chris and Jim, where they stood at the main table where the Bible and other items still sat splayed out from where Storm had placed them. Ghram blew out a breath to steady himself. Dad, Jimmy, I know your tempers, and you're both damn good at the quarterback sneak, 'cause you both played that position. There's one thing I inherited from the Calhouns. I might not have the full height, but damn right I got the temper, and it appears my son has inherited that from me. Storm has only been shown the tip of the iceberg today, as it matches my own, and it runs deeper than the one that sunk the Titanic. You two put your right hands on the table and on the Bible my son brought here. It ain't my religion, but it's both of yours. They looked at one another. Chris flipped open the Bible and followed his instruction. Dad, stop cheating. Fingers flat on that left hand. Don't hand me the line about bandages. It won't let you. I know you. You'll cross your fingers on your throwing arm. And that cannon ain't going to cut it. There ain't no Hail Mary here, 'cause Uncle Mac ain't in the end zone to save the game. Mac busted out laughing. The kid knows your moves, crazy legs. Jim bumped Chris's shoulder. Smart-ass, Chris growled, laying his fingers flat on his left hand, and chuckled. Ghram smiled, like father, like son. Promise me, my son and my mom, along with Mom Ranella, on Chrissy's life and the memory of our sister and my guardian angel, Ranella Esther Calhoun, born on December 22nd of the year we lost her. You two won't go hunting and won't desecrate my birth mother's family name. I don't give a shit about the Carlsons. And Dad, you won't quit the kitchen of the B&B, because Storm inherits this historic mausoleum. He's going to need the best chef Cordon Bleu ever produced. You studied under Jacques Pepin, Paul Prudhomme, Jean-Pierre Brachet, Justin Wilson, and Miss Julia Child herself. You need to train someone before you retire. Chris huffed. Damn, Storm, your father's good, he winked. You know, son, I'm going to die in that kitchen and come back to look over the shoulder of the resident chef, probably the Khrushchev twins, to whisper in their ear what spices and seasonings they need to put in that recipe when I haunt this place. And oh boy, do I plan to haunt this place, he chuckled. So be very afraid. He wagged his eyebrows. I learned from the best goof around, my daddy. Ghram looked him in the eye and laughed. Swear it to me, both of you, on Chrissy's life and Ranny's memory. He glanced at Storm. They're Daddy's little girls, his namesake and our angel girl, my guardian angel. Manduala an oath, Chris answered. I swear. I swear, Jim responded. Now hit us, little brother, before Dad decides to hit you. Ghram straightened to his full 6 foot. And Dad, you will be helping Uncle Hut, Uncle Pat, and myself to repair that wall you put your ham-sized fist through, 'cause it's getting cold in here with that hole. That is a 300-year-old plaster, lap, and clapboard wall. You're lucky you got your ham-sized fist out of there. It's going to take some doing to repair. Now about this. The reason I had second thoughts about coming back here when Yaya Poppy and Bachianiki asked me, and the reason I said I wouldn't live here and wanted my own place, was any time I was here as a child, if I wasn't in the kitchen with you, Dad, or with Yaya Poppy or Papu Theo, Nana Pagina, or Grandmama Rosie. Georgie Porgy, as you called him, Dad, became my daytime nightmare. Chris's eyes darkened. The acting out, the temper tantrums, the cutting school when he was to pick you up. If Aunt Penny was to get you, she'd take you to Mystic Moments, to Ranella and Emily. That's where you insisted on going, and there wasn't an issue. Or if Bocce Anarchy or PayPal Sydney went to retrieve you, no issue when you stayed with PayPal until we left and worked in the garden or the greenhouse or orchards, and he was by your side. Ghram simply gave a nod. Chris straightened. If he did bring you here, he always had an excuse as to why you were late. Meeting at the privatized school, or when he took over as vice principal at the elementary school. There seemed to be an unscheduled after-school administrative meeting or an extracurriculum activity he suggested you participate in. And when it was asked about, Aunt Peg wasn't aware of them. None of the teachers or the administrations knew anything about them. Then junior high, you got the rig, your tilly-tally. And it got worse with... Fuck. Son, talk to us, please. Chris sighed. Oh, yeah, Dad. We had after-school, he made air quotes, activities. Aunt Penny and the adults were kept unbeknownst to. Ever wonder why he insisted on having a van for school and a personal car for around town? His toolbox was his toy box, and we ain't talking about Legos. Chris closed his eyes. Your 13th birthday. Exactly, Dad. Chris looked at Ethel. You wanted the 10-speed Tilly from the thrift store. The old Schwinn. We got it for you, and he threw a fit telling me it was too dangerous for you to ride a bike from home to school, then to here or to the shop. Then you built the cart, Tally, and had Reicher weld what you wanted together to create your delivery franchise and started your service so you didn't come home until we were there. Rasputin raised a hand. Chris? He was waiting at your home. And when that failed, because Mama Valkyrie noticed him, and she went to Nana Esther and Nanny Calhoun. They went to Papu, Alexei, Mr. Quinn, and the curmudgeon, the old man himself, and Pops and Poppy. And the men approached one day when he showed up there and told him to leave and then kept a watch. But you weren't there and wouldn't go there, Ghram, so he did what? Wait a second. If it started to rain, Ghram, you asked your customers if you could call Silver because he had the microbus. Am I right? Chris asked. That's why when we picked up Storm, you were able to fit the rig in place and climb into the engine deck without a blink of an eye, and enabled me to lay Storm on Bessie's bench seat with the rig pushed in there and giving us more room. The bike was against the driver's wall, Ghram. You popped the baskets in a second and put them in the cart with the tow bars in the front of the bus. Shit, you were able to move the dogs into the engine area, and yet George's van could haul the bike and cart easier because he removed the seat and it was a panel van. When Rain purchased it, you insisted we help to pay for the cabinets to be fitted and the paint job on it to be, you didn't have to see it running around town in the color you remember. Chris bowed his head to his youngest son. Czar stepped back. and waved to draw their attention. Uncle Czar, Ghram turned to him. Ghram, he threw an almighty fit when he showed up at Aunt Desiree's and my place on a rainy afternoon. You had called Silver, and here he was. Des calmed you down, and we brought you home in her pickup. He followed, and Dad and him almost came to blows, with Dad telling him to go straighten out his own kid and leave you the hell alone. Ghram nodded. He and that van were the devil's playground to me. Dad, that's why the first time Storm threw a fit about George wanting to take him for a ride, I called the meeting to lessen the vehicles in the inn, to cut cost on the insurance for those vehicles, and had Skeeter do an analysis and an assessment of the cost saving, and suggested that personal vehicles be taken off of the insurance, and we were only to keep the vehicles that were used for pickups and supplies. That they and you stop using your personal vehicles for the business of the inn. Ethel smiled. It made sense to Ranella and I and to her parents. Yes, Skeeter got the point across. It would be cheaper for all of you and the inn, and also we could eliminate the cost of at least one of them from the inn and save money, thereby enabling us to purchase a vehicle that could be used for clients to take them to the theater, or for the canal boats, or for them to arrive and be picked up for town tours. If we did that, it should be the van that was put on the chopping block so that we could buy the Maybach. We could then purchase the luxury car to shuttle guests. Ghram shrugged. Silver rose to put his hand on Chris's shoulder. Funny how every now and then, as our house was next to the shop which Izzy and Flea now own, on rainy days, if Bessie girl was in the driveway, she'd wind up with a flat to a point where I'd have Em take it to the witch shop, and I'd keep her bug in one of the shop bays. Then, if I got a call from you, Ghram, or Chris, that he needed a lift, there would miraculously be a second call from Georgie Porgy, and he'd volunteer from the kindness of his blackened heart to pick Ghram up. Yeah, like Uncle Vernon in Harry Potter. My blighter ass, it was to lend a helping fucking hand. My Desiree knew that, and got in his blighter face in several different occasions, and he knew damn right well he raised a hand. If he raised a hand, Rasputin and I, with her papa and ours, would tear him limb from limb, Tsar stated. Blaya, I know it's Russian. What does it mean? Storm looked at them. Fuck or fucking. The words came from around the room in multiple directions. Okay then. I just got my second lesson in Russian to English. Thank you all. Storm blinked at his father as they laughed. Chapter 46. The teen's reaction cut some of the build-up of tension. Ghram roared with laughter and had to shake his head. You stay with us and we'll have you speaking Russian, Arapaho, Gaelic, Yiddish, Scotch Gaelic, Polish, Spanish, Yaqui, Ukrainian, Afghanistani, Ugandan, French poorly, and German with a Prussian dialect. And a bit of Lakota Sioux if our cousin Lloyd and Penny get here. Dr. Danny speaks her father's people's language, that is a community of the First Nation out of Canada, Silver smiled. And Emily put up her hand. Ghost, Casper, and Spirit speak fluent Swedish, Finn, Swiss, and Old Norse. Sonny's mom and dad speak Austrian and Hungarian. Don't forget Risa, Jim put in. My little sister-in-law is fluent in Romanian, and when pissed off, her gypsy slang kicks in. I've been cussed out in it several times. You deserved it, knowing you, Jimmy, Ghram smiled. True, he did, Bethana put in. Thanks, sweetheart. I love you too. Anyway, I got something to say here to all of you. Uncle Silver, you and Aunt Em never left me down. None of Manduala ever did. Even to a point where Aunt Em put a roof rack on Irish Whiskey Go-Go too, and we separated Tilly and squashed her in the back seat and hoisted Tally up on that roof rack. Then other things started happening to Bessie. Expensive things. Her windshields being busted, tires were not just flat but slashed, and sugar in her tank. The day Uncle Czar and Aunt Desiree brought me home and he showed up, you went to fire Bessie's 2498cc Bernie Bergman motor and she locked. You started to ride in the rain, wound up with bronchitis and strep throat more than once, and on one occasion it turned into bronchial pneumonia. Ethel rubbed Gram's back. Yeah, then I got busted for cutting school and loitering, but by none other than Noel Franks. Rasputin folded his arms across his chest to look at Tsar. He got involved because that ass called him. George, I mean. Not the child's father. Interesting. Wait a sec. Didn't he was involved in the truancy and called George as well. Why the hell wouldn't he have called Chris or Ethel? Ghram, what memories are you unsure of? The younger of the two Russian brothers asked. There's a few glitchy ones involving Franks' town car, but I haven't figured it out if it was me being afraid of being brought home in it or if he shuddered. I know he was around after he resigned. He was accused of child molestation. The woman he dated, her son. Charges were brought against Noel Franks, and they moved within a few weeks of the plea bargain with him. I need to check on something. Hold on. Dakota left the room with his phone to his ear. With that truancy, he called George, and he took it upon himself that he was going to take you and Reed camping to straighten you both out and get the two of you on the right track. Chris took a look at Silver, then looked at Ghram. Talk to me. What the hell went on? That bastard, Czar growled. Ghram shrugged. I know, Dad. Uncle Czar, you're on the right track. You, Sonny pointed at him. He came home sick that Sunday and spent the week in the hospital. I remember that, Ethel. It was because of exposure. And yet, Reed and George were perfectly healthy. Why was that, Ghram? Now's the time to speak, Sonny asked. I wouldn't sleep with them in the tent. I hid in the woods so I couldn't be found. Beneath and under the roots of a riverside tree. Ghram closed his eyes and shook for several seconds. Jim blew out a breath. You started drinking really young. I know that. He was part of it, right? I took you fishing. You had a couple of recycled bottles with some booze in them. I asked you why. You wouldn't give me an answer. The liquor stores and beer distributors are controlled by the LCB, so you wouldn't have gotten it there. What's that? Storm looked at his father, then to his uncle. Liquor Control Board. They answered as one and smiled. Ghram continued. New Jersey has package houses for sales. Pennsylvania has liquor stores and beer distributors. One can't sell the other's product. Oh, okay, yeah, Kathy would run to the local store for 6-packs. Jim, it actually started long before that. On our gatherings during the holidays and summer cookouts. If Mom or someone made Kool-Aid or sun tea, we kind of had our drink bottles, which had our names on them in permanent markers. He knew whose was who. He was lacing your juice? Peggy looked at Hut, then around the table. I knew he kept a bottle in the back file cabinet in the vice principal's office. But how many of our kids did this bastard? Only me, Aunt Penny. He was only interested in me. Now I know why. Because of who fathered me and who my birth mother was. He was jealous of Dad, and Aunt Ranella had cut him off of any funds. He started the summer I was 5. To answer your question, Jim, as the years went on, I figured if he was molesting me and Reed was having fun beating the shit out of me after all those years, I was owed. His liquor cabinet in the carriage house, right? Chris drummed his finger. That's the summer she informed him the marriage was over. It was in name only because she caught wind of his romance at the Red Raven, and it wasn't a love bug kind of thing, but with drugs. The hard shit, coke, and he was shooting H. Family, I found something. Dakota walked in. It appears that notices failed to be sent out. Noel Franks is on the sex offender registry. That was one of the charges brought against him, and he pleaded to. Ghram, have you spoke to Perry on this memory? As for the shit with George, yeah, he's pretty sure I'm remembering correctly. But like a lot of my memories, it's hit and misses, bits and pieces, and we need to wait for it to come around full, to fit into the hole in the puzzle. I don't remember I don't remember it all, but I do remember he carried cans of Acme soda, always grape, in the car, and he always handed me an open can. This is Noel we're talking about. I think that's what started things. The carriage house, Dad, it's also far enough away from the inn, over the footbridge, and away from the caretaker's house and cottages that you can't hear a scream. And it has the jacuzzi and sauna room with the sunk-in tub. Chris looked from him. It does. But Ranella never. No, she never did use it. Let's just say I know what can happen in all 3. He gave a quirk of a smile to his lips. The doors to the place and the cabinets were never locked. He left them open like he left the van. An open invitation, and Reed, I don't like the term, invited me, but took me there more than once. One day, I was almost 16. George caught me, But then I was so caught up in my own addiction of alcohol caused by him that I just didn't give a shit anymore. He turned to Ethel. Mom, don't freak. Ethel stood there blinking. Oh, gods! She put her hands to her mouth. You were planning on killing yourself, weren't you? Ghram, how could you? Yep, one last swig before I took that gun I knew was in the liquor cabinet and blew my brains out. Nothing mattered except killing the pain and those damn memories. I wasn't right in the head, Mom, fighting my own demons, and terrified what he could do to all of you. He threatened to drag me up to you, and if I opened my mouth about him, you were afraid I wouldn't believe you, because he always said I produced one bad apple. I'm sorry, son. Chris dropped his head to shake it. Don't, Dad. Let me get through this, please. Perry and I agreed. I have to. Chris nodded and looked into his son's eyes. Go on. I'm here, Squirt. What did this bastard pull? Simple. He provided me with the booze I now craved to get through the day, thanks to his and others' grooming. On my part of it, he took a deep breath and released it. I would not say a word, as he'd take me before Manduala, and no one would ever trust my word again. He'd make sure of it. He presented me with a pager. He wouldn't page me during class, as he was in his office, but when he did, I was to be ready for him to pick me up, or if I was making a delivery, I was to finish it and meet him at the carriage house. Silver dropped his head and shook it, then stared Chris in the eyes. Should have known. Damn it to hell. Chris, Ghram, I'm sorry, son. Effie, my God, girl, I'm so sorry. I screwed up royally. My instincts have never failed me, but I failed to use them properly, and Ghram paid the friggin' price. This was followed by a string of Arapaho words. Sounds like cussing to me, Storm smiled. Am I right, Dad? You're learning, Ghram grinned, and Uncle can put together some very interesting combinations in a string of fluency. Sure as hell can, Chris agreed with a smile. Silver blew out a breath, then finished. You were to come in by the old pathways off of the towpath, the deer track that Peg, Gilly, and I used all the freaking times from Poppy and Theo figuring it out and took us in while we were still on their streets and hiding from the man back then or ducking CPS and any caseworker who wanted to send us back to Iowa to call and Satu. So no one was the wiser, as it runs behind the old neighborhoods and the wooded area that connects all the lesser hiking trails back in there. Right, Uncle Silver. You got it figured out. He pushed up his trifocals. I spotted your tilly-tally there and thought, oh shit, he's hanging with Reed. But you were dealing with Georgie Porgy. Chris, just shoot me. I should have walked in there like I wanted to, with my scalp knife in my hand at the ready, and gone and drug you out of there. Uncle Silver, he slept with a Beretta. The Beretta he kept in the liquor cabinet. He was armed at all times. He threatened to kill anyone that tried to interfere. He would have done it too, Silver, and then said he thought you were a burglar and trying to break in. Misjudgment on his part. Sorry, Emily, Pat said. He pulled the Beretta on me one day, and as I'd asked him why he let Reed continue to pick on Ghram. I was met with the gun in my face and told, they're brothers, ain't they? Sorry, Uncle Pat. I remember that day. It scared the piss out of me, and I didn't understand what he said because I never thought of Reed as a brother of Manduala. So I answered the page any time it went off. He had a particular fascination with something. The fact that I wasn't circumcised. Unusual for a boy of Jewish background. But I now know why. Ranello was Greek Orthodox Catholic and Irish Catholic. Father's last name, mother's religion. And Grandma Franklin was Grandma Franklin was Portuguese Jew. So Mom, even with Pop Franklin being English Protestant, you and all our uncles are that on that side are Jewish by Ghram. Am I correct? Yes, but that is only American thinking after World War II. In Europe and Ireland, either parent that carries Judaism, the child is Jewish. But you are correct, Ethel smiled, and I was honored as she asked, and I said yes. He nodded. It was followed for her, so she had at least something. At least that was part of my world. That was part of hers. That's why she got upset when I came home the first summer break of college, and I told you all I chose to have the surgery. Ethel looked at him as she placed her fingers of both hands once again to her mouth and gasped as she stared at him wide-eyed. This is why you put yourself through that kind of pain as a young man, as a young adult when you went to college? Don't worry about it, Mom. What I put myself through, Destiny took care of me throughout the recovery time. She is my BFF, and Lily was with her to help. Then when one had class, the other was there to take care of me and get me things I might need. Ghram sighed. Afraid so. Maybe it was stupid, but it helped me to forget that part of things. When the hell did this shit stop? The molestation, and damn it, don't tell me I'm wrong, 'cause son of a bitch. I know now that bastard was forcing you to have sex with him. When did it start and when did it end? Chris stared his youngest son down, demanding an answer from him. Ghram looked out the window, then back to his father. Memorial Day weekend when I was 5 started the molestation. I'm going to be vulgar here, my Aunt Lionesses, so I'm sorry. Please accept my apology before I say this, but the Lions will understand where I'm coming from. Go on, we'll deal, Sonny stated. I was 10 when it went further with him using his fingers. Dad, the day after my bar mitzvah, he took me to a motel so he wouldn't have to clean things up. A friend of his owned it. It was down in Delaware, in Wilmington. That was no friend. That was a family member, and the motel is the Carlson Royale. Tucker Boone answered. The owner is Ramsey Carlson. Old sex partners have a tendency to return together and join in the bedroom. George has an illegitimate half-brother from his old man. His father, Happy, turned to him. How do you know this, or don't I want to know? I'm 4 years older than Ghram. I had my driver's license. I just got my car, and I followed the van when I seen him pull over and lure Ghram into it while he protested. But at 16, what was I going to do, Dad? So I started looking into it as I'm the genealogist by trade and the history teacher for 11th and 12th grade. He shrugged. Tucker scared the shit out of them a couple of times when the cops showed up, and I know it was him that called it in. There were three of them. One of them was Frank's. They popped my cherries repeatedly for over 4 hours, and that's when I was introduced to sadomasochism. I was on the receiving end, but it didn't end until Reed almost killed me with the butcher knife. Ghram swore me to silence, but I've been his confidant for all these years. When he needs to talk, we do. Tucker nodded to him. Thank you, brother. You were always there. He's kept my secret, too. Surprise, Mom and Dad. You got a queer son who, like your oldest, served in the Air Force. Not Special Forces, like Ricer, but, yeah, served. Knew it all along, Happy smiled. So what? You're like Ghram? Are you? Bet stated. Tuck pumped his fist. Besides, you're a better shot than I am. Rifle and handgun, Ricer stated. I'm staying out of this one, came from Cody. Tell us about, if I'm right, you're starting to carry a pager at about 16, John stated. For the first time, the Reverend Father spoke up. The pager. Chris clenched his fist as he pushed off the table. When you came home from the hospital, it would go off and you would excuse yourself. Azart Farr couldn't figure out why you kept bleeding and were so anemic. You weren't healing because he was forcing you. Is that right? How many times did that bastard hurt you while you were still trying to heal? And don't try to bullshit me. Ghram looked down the table and shrugged. I was home 6 weeks and 2 days before Reed stabbed me. 3 to 4 times a day. If I was bleeding too much, he used a toy. It didn't matter to him. I didn't drink, though, Dad. Not a drop. I was sober as a Mormon judge, to quote Jonathan. Every time he took me, throughout the pain, I was sober. I made the promise to you all and to myself. I kept that promise. When I came home from college to come to work, he wanted to restart it all over again. Fucking bastard, so I growled. He approached me in the first office I had, what's now Mom's. He said it was more fun when I was sober and I should have healed by then, so I would be as tight as a drum. This time, he set a phone down. He told me to take photos of myself and send them to his private email address. I picked up the phone and dropped it in the trash can and told him to get the hell out, or I was first calling Jimmy, telling him everything. Then I would tell not only our dad, but the entire Manduala family what he'd done to me, and that I knew it was him who set up the shit that happened to me when I was 17, because he lost the use of the drug deals at the inn when Reed was thrown out and they wanted to get even with you, Dad. I stood to head to the door. Ghram shuddered and started to shake. Squirt. He waved Chris off. 1 minute, Dad, please. He went into deep breathing and closed his eyes. Okay, I'm back. He demanded to know what I was doing as I picked up the phone. I told him I was calling Ranella. He slammed me against the file cabinet and said before he let me do that, he'd kill Chrissy and her babies. He squeezed his eyes shut and took a harsh inhalation for several seconds, causing his father to move through the tables and come around behind him. "It's Dad, Squirt. I'm coming up behind you, and I'm going to put my arms around you. You know, with my children, I'm all bluster, and I have never raised a hand to any of you. If I'd growl, if I ground at you, you'd lose the use of the TV. When you started to drive, your grounding was me taking your car keys. Your thinking was to protect your sissy and niece and nephew, so you take what he gave, and when they were safe, you come to me or Jim. I know the way you would have thought back then. You've matured since then." Ghram gave a nod. "I know, Dad. Too many times you should have set me on my ass over my attitude I'd inherit from you and the Calhoun males. You held me instead, and we talked. I'm just sorry I didn't listen and couldn't tell you the truth until now." Chris's massive arms went around his son from behind, and Ghram leaned into that huge chest and leaned his head back onto Chris's shoulder. Storm watched fascinated as his badass Lions quarterback, sergeant of the U.S. Marine Corps, became a caring, gentle daddy of his grown child in need and put his arms around Ghram until his son could steady himself. "I got you. We're all here. You can continue whenever you get together. We'll all wait for you." Ghram inhaled several times to straighten his shoulders. Chapter 47. Gram's breathing was rhythmic and steady. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. He gave a nod. "Ready, Dad." Chris released him, but placed both hands on his youngest son's shoulders to massage them gently. "I'm good, Dad, thank you. All of you." Another deep breath followed. Then, when he was done, he told me to fix myself. I looked like I'd had a night of fun. He wanted photos of his work. I picked up the phone from the trash, snapped a photo of the mess he made of my desk and of me. He glanced over his shoulder at his father as he gave a quirk of a grin. "You text me to get my ass into your office now." He looked over where Jess stood with Mac and Sonny. Tucker stood on his opposite side with Happy and Beth. Jess, you, Dan, and Tucker were with him. You three were setting up the kitchen computer for me and the cameras because you had a couple of kids that wanted to take classes with me because they were looking into going to Cordon Bleu and the School of American Cuisine when they graduated and wanted to get a start. And you had a couple of younger students that wanted to do classes for home ec, a couple of college kids on their own for the first time, struggling with proper meals and nutrition, and were making desperate requests for a couple of cooking lessons as to how they could use ramen noodles and a hot pot. Jess nodded. "And this is," he bumped Jess's shoulder, "still burns water if you don't watch his ass." Jess smiled. "Hey, so does Tuck," Cody laughed. "True, but at least I don't burn the ass out of the bottom of a pot like Jess can do," Tucker grinned. "Hey, you two, I'm right here, you know." Jess put his hands on his hips. "You guys want to go to the corner? Knock it off," Bet told her sons. "Yes, ma'am," Tucker answered. "Sorry, Mom," Cody said. Jess smiled and stuck his tongue out. "That goes for you too, Jessup," Sonny stated. "Yes, Mom, but I'll tell you this. We thought my pops and Uncle Hap were the badasses when it came to one of their kids needing him. Uncle Chris was a raging bull. He shook his head. Never seen anything like that until that day. Oh, hell yeah, Tucker agreed. The fact that Ghram was starting to open us up to us guys and reconnecting, and Tucker convinced him to open up to the rest of the family. You trusted us. Wait, so you guys knew Tux was in the closet? Ricer asked. He just come out of the service and was in college. Just looked at him. So, don't ask, don't tell. You knew, but it was his choice. Got it, Ricer nodded. And that was big. That was a big-ass step for both of them after what had happened, and Tuck told us he had no clue how to get Ghram out of it because... Go ahead, Jess. It's out. Tuck had been threatened too. It was Ghram who made the statement. Happy looked at their middle son. He threatened to harm Taz. We knew what happened with Smeagol and figured he had something to do with it. Happy locked eyes with Chris. Neither looked away. Well, as it stood, we kind of wanted to see George get his ass kicked, and it had needed to be done from all the shit he put Aunt Ranella through, and now we were being trusted with the secrets. It wasn't time to let them loose as of yet. Just rubbed his chest at his heart. Had us all by this. He tapped it with a finger. We followed and moved out of the way and just watched in total awe the action, and when it got down and dirty, we stayed with Ghram. Just gave Ghram the thumbs up to encourage his friend and brother to continue. Tucker threw him a salute. Chris leaned into his son. Ghram, when I hit the door, he realized then that you were going to tell me everything, didn't he? Chris took in a deep breath, and that the three of them, these guys, would stand with you. Yep. You walked in, and he turned to see who it was. Then, when it turned out to be my father and three of my bros, I had been hanging with, besides Edward and Jonathan, he lost it. He busted me in the mouth. Jess, when I slammed into the wall, you went in front of me, almost through the bastard, to get to me. Tuck got me on my feet and steadied me. Uncle Mac and Hap, you two would have been proud of the wide receivers and centers moves these two put on him. Dan actually did a spin backward hurdle over the desk to get to the fridge like Saquon Barkley or Randall Cunningham used to do. He turned to look at the men, then to Jess, and Dano grabbed me to keep me from going down due to my head bouncing off the cabinet, and his instincts kicked in with all the shit he and Ari had been through before Uncle Mac and Aunt Sonny got hold of them, while Jess protected with Tuck. Dan grabbed the water bottle and paper towels and a cold soda can from the fridge by my desk for an improvised ice pack to go into EMT mode and stop the bleeding and keep the swelling down, while Jess took care of the gash on the back of my head from the corner of the cabinet I'd hit. What? Storm looked up at him. He hurt you again, and when you called for help, he hit you in front of Grandpa and Uncle Max and Hap, Jess and Dan and Tucker? Did he have a few screws loose or something? Ghram put his arms around Storm's shoulder. Your Uncle, Jess, Dan, Tucker and Izzy, if you please. The rest you'll be calling Aunt and Uncle too. Yeah, he nailed me, but he looked at Chris, still behind him, and cocked his head. That's my dad, your grandpa. Badass first string, Captain Crazy Legs, scramble his ass off, quarterback, in touchdown mode. Class of 1980 for the Lions and U.S. Marine Corps Sergeant. January 9th, 1982, San Salvador, El Salvador. His guard duty vehicle was fired on with a 7.62 millimeter weapon. He was hit. Our dad gave cover to his fellow Marines by returning fire against the guerrillas. He saved Uncle Silver and Iceberg's lives, who had been the first to be hit, by shoving Uncle Silver out of the vehicle so Uncle Iceberg could get to his weapon, and even hit, Dad shoved hard enough to push Uncle Silver into the cushioned pile of jungle leaves, and the three of them actually led a governmental military force to create the settlement of the war a year after I was born. Your granddaddy ain't just a hell of a chef. He can kill a man 6 ways to Sunday, and he has taught it to each of his kids. He's also a distant cousin of the IRA and historical hero of Ireland of the 1960 Easter Uprising, in that of James Connolly, who your Uncle Jim is named for. Ghram smiled at him. George split my lip and started calling me a faggot. Sorry for the use of the word, Dad, but he used it. Forgiven. You're stating a fact. That was just after Dad and your uncles hit the door. That's when he swung, which Dad rightly heard and saw the punch thrown at me. I got nailed, even as I tried to block it, 'cause the shitting thing took me off guard, 'cause of him being a southpaw. I hadn't been in the ring for a year, so I had slowed down in my reaction time. Chris leaned in to storm. It's good to be called Grandpa by you. To tell you the truth, he patted Gram's shoulder. If I knew then what I just found out this morning, Jim coughed, I wouldn't have pulled Dad off the bastard behind Papoose otter barn, he admitted. Dad put him in the hospital and threatened to pull all three, me, Mom, and himself, out of here if George was ever to enter the inn again. That weekend, Mom and I swapped offices, and I inherited your hideaway cubby. And there were other dances between Grandpa and him over me, but he didn't come into the inn until one fateful afternoon 3 years later, 2 days before their deaths. That was one hell of a blow-up. He turned to Chris. Dad, can you explain that one? Because it does need to be out in the open so Storm can understand certain things with the lionesses and lions front line. I think also that's where one memory he has is coming from. Now, I went to Dr. Farr. He looked Chris in the eye, then looked at his mom, Ethel. Yes, Dad, Mom. He did an exam. We took care of things, and as my dad handled things, and the man never came near me again until that fateful afternoon, he kept his freedom. But Tucker, Jess, and Dan sensed something, and as teachers, we kept a lookout. Jess stood next to his father and nodded. Dan was at the school, and as Tucker, is known to be known to be the kid's favorite teacher, and very trusted as the red-headed werewolf. And I checked with the kids who I started to teach through the satellite. We were privy to anything that came up. That day, he initially wanted petty cash for Reed, who was going to pay it back. Bullshit, he would have, came from Rasputin. With Father John's agreement of a nod, he stated, and the devil likes the sound of the great lady Mahalia Jackson's gospel songs. Ghram grinned. Only Uncle John. You know it. I had already been told by Yaya Poppy and Bachi Anarchy that this would happen, and not to let either of them have any finances. Something was up, but I don't know what the hell was going on at the time. My guess, when it came to it, is he figured he could have his cake and eat it too, get the money he wanted, and force me into giving it to him and forcing me sexually. But he didn't realize at the time I'd matured and had come out to Mom and Dad and Manduala. So he was in the wrong as always. And as I should have known, my parents and Manduala didn't care if I looked at a pair of jeans or a skirt, because they stood by Uncle Reuben in the 70s and 80s until we lost him to leukemia at age 19. And it didn't matter to them that I was gay, so it didn't matter to them if I had 3 heads and a tail. But try to convince a Top Gun in Tucker of that. Thick-headed like all my men, and his baby sister, Bet smiled as she tapped Tucker on the back of his head. I do agree with you, Aunt Bet. I was their son, no different than Jim or Chrissy or Rainey or any of Manduala's other kids, and they loved me. I just wish now that I would have let it all be known what was going on back then, instead of keeping it to myself all these fucked up years. Dad, you want to explain about the brawl that didn't make it to behind the auto barn 2 days before their deaths? I'm still a little fuzzy on that from the concussion I got and that I had to deal with. Yeah, you see, Storm, we at Manduala set down a rule. The ladies could yell and scream at each other if they got ticked off at one another. They were never to raise a hand to each other or risk the use of claws or hair. If they had a brawl with another woman, they were to protect their face and eyes, and by any means necessary. They were lionesses. Unsheath the claws and use their fangs. If a male came at them, use any means possible until one of us badasses, any of us badasses, got to them. I don't ever remember that happening, them doing anything more than a raised voice. They very rarely had an issue with each other. If something did come up, it was usually from outside, like Michelle or Perfection and Exquisite. They were Dan's mother and aunt, or was that dingbat's name Excellence? I don't remember. Christ, I hope I'm not going senile. And I can't blame that on too many sacks, 'cause these guys held the line. In the 4 years of them protecting me, I only remember being set on my ass twice. One of them was the championship game in 78, and the second, senior year of 80. And that was my own stupid fault. The shoelace came open without me realizing it. I handed off to Silver and stepped on my own lace, staggered, and there was a late hit on me by a Neshaminy tackle, and he slammed me to the ground and drew a flag, and his coach benched him. Silver made the touchdown, and Happy got my ass up, and our two big badass Russian bookends plowed the dude for the late hit. And that was a damn setup by George. He put a bounty on you after you beat the shit out of him when he made the pass at Ethel. The kid admitted it later to Coach Blair. Happy poured himself a cup of coffee. Is that what happened? I know Blair was furious, almost as pissed as he was at the brawl at Stanford that December of '79. Anyway, us guys, if there were issues from time to time, not many of them that I recall. They mostly took place when we were in our late adolescence and early teens. Testosterone coming into play and growing into our bodies, minds, and emotions. Plus, learning to think with the new extra weight of the balls. Papu told us to handle that shit away from the ladies and take it behind the otter barn. We would, and we beat the hell out of each other in a fair fight, bare knuckles, fist to fist, and in the end we shook hands, gave a chest bump and a hug. Papu, Paypal, and Abuelo would patch us up. That didn't happen that often, and if one of us effed up really bad, Papu would call our father. If we had one, Silver added. If not, as in my case, he'd handle it and give me a boxing lesson of our lives. There's a weight bag and boxing equipment out there under the back carport where we can all work out. He'd make us work the bag until we couldn't hold our arms up and then give us a tongue lashing about what we did wrong. It didn't happen often, like I said. I think Czar and Rasp went at it more often than any of us because they're brothers, thick-headed Russian Jews, and less than a year apart. Da, the brothers said as one and smiled. Chris grinned. We didn't need to. We didn't need it. We didn't need to really. We've all kept that tradition. Hence my threat to Dad when he used the godforsaken F word. The F-bomb is one thing. We're all military, and our ladies have used it on occasion, like you heard from Grandma this morning. And they won't hesitate to use it against us. I'll wash my mouth out later with Lifebuoy, Ethel smiled. Not Lifebuoy. You'll get soap poisoning like Ralphie, Emily called. What? Storm looked at her. Old Christmas movie, A Christmas Story. It's in our library, Emily smiled. Oh. Okay, but y'all are really strange, Storm chuckled. The ladies will use the bomb, usually at ourselves, mostly when we get out of line, and it snaps us back in. But Dad knew better, and Grandma warned him. That is one of the words that is not tolerated by Manduala, along with the M-word or any derogatory slang of someone's ancestry. Got it, and I agree, Storm nodded. Good. They become fighting words, unless it's one of the kids that hear it and need to ask about it. They get the full explanation and why it's not tolerated. Chris rubbed his goatee. And boy, have there been some interesting conversations on how to explain other people's uses of it and what it actually means and why it won't be tolerated in this family. Pat shook his head. Heads nodded around the table with several shakes, and an oh boy followed with a boy howdy and a who-do. That from Ricer. Okay, here goes. I came in from picking you up, Storm, from daycare. As you weren't 5 yet, you weren't in kindergarten, but attended Head Start and went to a daycare after, and I, Ghram, or Papu would pick you up. On that day, it was my turn. I pulled into the parking area, got out, and you started to freak. I remember grabbing you, and we took you off to the back kitchen porch, through the door and into the kitchen, and I slid in blood on the floor. George was standing there in the middle of the kitchen with both hands around Renella's throat. Holy, I remember that. She was starting to turn blue, and she was chanting something. I don't know what. Storm blinked rapidly. A shield for protection over your father. He'd already used his fist and broken her nose. Dad was down and getting ready to go to war as he was rising from the floor. And yes, your dad was bleeding badly from the temple and the corner of his eye and his scalp line. It was his blood I had slid in. Storm looked at Ghram. The man turned to lift the side of his hair on the right side to show the scar of multiple stitches. Storm's eyes widened. And you were all ready to roll? Jeez. George had been arguing with Renella on the kitchen back porch. She later told us she entered the inn to get away from him. He'd already hit her several times, breaking her nose, and when she fled for the back kitchen door and came in, he grabbed her by the back of the hair and slammed her to the ground, at which point your dad was making a pot of coffee and turned to help her. As he got her to her feet and turned with the phone to start to dial 911, George got a hand on a large glass pot and cold-cocked Dad in the side of the head from behind to try to eliminate him from the equation. Dad went down, but not for long. As he rose, I could see the fire in those green eyes. Renella is bleeding from the mouth and nose, and I yell for Theo to come through the swinging doors, and as he did, he saw the blood on his baby girl and his grandson, 'cause yes, Yaya and Papu knew Dad belonged to the three of us. His great-grandson is in my arms and screaming and thrashing like he's going apeshit and trying to lunge at George with his hands in the shape of claws. He always was a vicious little cur. He learned that from Beastly. Ethel smiled, and his dad and Grandpa. Storm chuckled. Gee, thanks, Grandma. Welcome, and that's true. You used to steal Beastly's rawhide bones and gnaw on them. Ugh! Storm gagged. He reached for a glass of water to drink. Ethel laughed. Glad you think that now. Your fur babies will be grateful for not having to share those with you. Storm took another drink and set the glass down to shudder. Oh, that's gross. Chris busted out laughing. Anyway, your great-grandfather is seeing this. Well, it wasn't good. That Greek temper went off, and I literally did a handoff pass of my grandson to Dad, like I was slamming a football into Silver's belly. The force I put into that handoff drove your dad back against the door of the walk-in freezer, and when he hit it with the concussion he'd suffered and his own blood on the floor that his feet slipped in, he slid to the floor and covered you to protect you from whatever was going to happen. And I took up the front line of Happy's position of center and went through the son of a bitch and drove him into the basement door as Theo grabbed his little girl out of the way. Something not known to many. Theo was a nose tackle in high school. He caught his daughter like she was the quarterback, and he broke through the line and spun her like he was going for the sack. Only he set her down on the floor next to Dad and Papa Sidney's arms and crouched to next to Dad into Papa Sidney's arms and crouched to check on Dad and you. I don't know where Abuelo Cordero came from, but he stood over you to protect, and it was Abuelo who tore the foam from the wall, wires and all, and made the call for the ambulance. But Dad, one thing I do remember, you didn't just put George into the pantry door. You put him halfway through it. 2 weeks later, we were still fitting the pieces together for the repair. Ghram blinked. True. Well, back to Georgie Porgy and I. I bounced him around the kitchen, me slamming him into shit, and through the pantry door, then crashing through the back kitchen door and onto the porch like something out of a John Wayne Western, only the door was already off the hinges, and it was actually part of the wall we went through. We rolled around the porch floor and splintered out several screen frames and onto the ground, and I was up in a second from all the years of training. He was a hell of a lot slower because of the beer gut, and he was never athletic to begin with. I didn't wait to get him behind the otter barn, where the boys, then men, settled up when we needed to. It was right out in the September afternoon. We went at it. It didn't take more than 5 minutes in the making, and it was all over but the shouting. George Carlson had spent his last day on the property, and he knew it. I called the brothers of Manduala. Hell yeah, Hut said. She and Ghram were both a mess, and we were all ready to kill him. Emily nodded. It was all hands on deck, with us lionesses trying to keep our lions from being charged with first-degree murder by promising them anything from home-cooked meals to nookie right there and then in the open daylight if they would just stop and think. That did work, Silver wagged his eyebrows. And yeah, I'm the one that took Emily up on the offer. One look at our queen and then our Ghram, and that was it. They went to the carriage house. His shit was packed up and loaded in Desiree's pickup and taken to his apartment. He was put into a cab and told he was never to set foot on the property again, or I and Theo would press charges of assault and battery, and the Queen would not have a say in the matter, and there was going to be a damn divorce. That's one of the reasons we do not know why he was in the car that night or what the meeting was about. but I'm pretty sure it had something to do with the Queen and him. And Theo and Poppy were attending as witnesses to try to keep their daughter safe. Chris blew out a breath and turned to Jim. She had a restraining order set against him. So did they. So that's why it doesn't make sense. Your turn, Jimbo. Chapter 48. Ghram turned to his older brother. Jimmy? Asswipe, Jim smiled. When you were born and Dad and Mom brought you home, I was 10, Chrissy was 8. Mom and Dad had lost Ram just 3.5 years earlier. Her nursery was still behind locked doors. It was such a good feeling to have that door open and the room used. We didn't give a royal rat's ass where you came from. Chrissy had a live baby doll, and I had a baby brother who I was going to teach to fish, camp, hike, shoot hoops with, and do all kinds of shit with. You could hit the three-pointer where I didn't have a prayer in hell of doing it. We cheered you on the Phillies and watched the Eagles win the Super Bowl in 2017 when Izzy was on the team, and so many blown games and imploding years. Let's hope this one isn't one of them. We both hated Tio together, and we both wished McNabb would deck the ass instead of just putting up with him. You were at every pee-wee football and soccer game I played in, or Chrissy's gymnastic meets and camps. You were the one who tugged on Dad's arm and said she just busted her foot and ran onto the area to have her lean on you until Dad could get there and pick her up and carry her off the floor. Ghram turned to Storm. Your aunt was on the 1996 Olympic gymnastics squad for Team USA and survived the Atlanta bombing. She saved lives. She with the team won a medal, but she re-broke that same foot that night of the bombing at the park. She was in the middle of it with two friends, male gymnasts in Donnie and Kiwi. You'll meet them at another time. Ghram blew out a breath. Wow. As it turned out, you were right. She broke her left foot in 4 places on the landing from the pommel horse, Jim continued. We were at your music gigs and recitals. You blow me away on guitar. 6 12-string, acoustic, electric. Christ, Ghram, you can put the playing of Chet Atkins, Jimmy Page, Pete Townsend, and Slash put together to shame, and woodworking. Not even Uncle Hut and Pat can touch you. I understand the fear of him, George, I mean. The pain, and even the fact that he made you feel ashamed. Jim walked around the table as Ghram turned to face him and started into tremors. Storm stepped between his grandfather and around his father to stand in front of Jim and face down his uncle. Jim's smile widened. Storm, I'd never heard him. You can stand down. We'd gone nose to nose over shit before, and yeah, your dad has set me on my ass more than once, and on several occasions, as a matter of fact, behind that said Autobarn. He's got quick hands. Although I admire your bravery, you make a hell of a soldier, and your instincts on things today prove you got the makings of a damn good detective on the police force. He placed a hand on Gram's shoulder. This is my kid brother. He looked down at Storm's 5'7", from his own 6'6" height. I'll tell you true, kiddo. I've known for a lot of years that my little bro here was different. He was special, and we were blessed by him and our family. He stopped coming to me when he was about 8, when I went into the police academy. I now know why, I think. It started then to keep you quiet. He, George, and his father had political connections. Noel Franks for one, and Tommy Corbett, the head of the academy, for another. He was spiking your drinks already, Jesus juicing you, and he kept threatening that he would have Mom and Dad fired or destroy my career. The only one he couldn't scare you over was Chrissy, so he threatened to do something to her, didn't he? Jim stopped dead in his tracks. The summer she was raped. He threatened to have it happen again, didn't he? What did he threaten to do to your sister? Chris growled. The door opened. Christina, with her husband, LeBeau, slipped in to stand across from her father and met his eyes. Storm saw their eyes lock. He watched as Chris froze in place. Storm figured she'd heard something. He looked. Her look was clear on its meaning. Storm stared in total shock at the fire in her eyes and wondered to himself, what the hell is going on now? Oh, what the fuck have we stirred up that isn't known? He just knew Ghram saw it too. They were to keep their mouths shut. Christine would listen to Jim's speech as his back was to her. Maybe, or maybe not, she would be gunning for her big brother. It all depended on what he said, and Jim's back was to her. He didn't even know she was there. He had no clue. He was flying blind. Christina, Silverbell, Calhoun, Sanjay could be an unpredictable cannon, he had been told by her children, with a very short fuse when it came to her baby brother. That was even worse than her father's temper. Ghram closed his eyes. Here goes the truth about this sitch, but you watch it. He watched her when we were in the pool here, or at the river, or at cookouts. He'd tell me how pretty she was with her auburn hair and dark eyes. She looked so much like Mom when they all were back in high school. He made a pass at Mom, and she told him where to head in at. And something had happened with Dad when he first moved to town in school. He'd actually told me he had a thing for Mom and tried to take her off of Dad, and would have chosen her over Ranella any day because she was hotter than the Queen with her red hair. Then he stated, you wouldn't want anything to happen to her again, would you? He could make it happen. Jim, Dad, he said, she's 16 and ripe for the picking. She's already been plucked. He'd have her raped a second time, and this time killed. Now, I know it was him the summer she turned 17, but she survived. You'd find her body in... He dropped his head and whispered, in my bed, and I'd get blamed. Dad, Mom, and you would hate me after I caused you all to lose Ranella Esther. You'd throw me out, and I'd be on the streets. And when I went to sell myself, he'd be the one who would buy my wares, and he'd own me. And oh God, he shuddered. That's fucking enough, Chrissy shouted. And there we end our stories for the day. with Chrissy, by the looks of it, beginning to have an explosion. The question is, who in the family can contain her anger? Would it be Ghram? Would it be Chris? And what is Jim's reaction going to be when he turns and sees her? Please subscribe, hit like, and don't forget to ring the bell for the next notification. Thank you, and have a good day.